Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome to the Networking RX podcast. I'm your host, Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Today we have another great guest. As our ongoing subscribers know, you people, often on this podcast, I will share ideas, insights, and best practices for building professional relationships and excelling at business networking. Occasionally, however, I'll be interviewing subject matter experts, authors, speakers, thought leaders, social scientists, people who share their knowledge to help us build relationships and understand why they work. Today on the program, I have Jean MacDonald, and that's Mac, M-A-C, not M-C. And she is a pioneering innovator, experienced educator who teaches us all how to turn contacts into leads and leads into strong customer relationships that can help us sustain business. She's a communication and business strategist, and she is known as the queen of connections. And if you spend 10 minutes on the phone with her, you will totally agree with that. She's in our few conversations, she's been truly helpful to me. So Jean, welcome to the program.
Why, thank you, Frank. I'm glad to be here today.
I guess let's take a step back in time. One of the things that you need to point out to our listeners is you have a background in Mary Kay. You've driven pink Cadillacs. You've earned pink Cadillacs. You haven't just driven pink Cadillacs. There's the difference there. And that just doesn't happen. People don't drive pink Cadillacs by selling lots of cosmetics. People drive pink Cadillacs by empowering lots of other people, connecting with lots of other people, and empowering lots of other people to sell cosmetics and be a champion of the Mary Kay brand. So, what can you say? You're the author of a book. The name of the book is Finding the Fortune: How to Strengthen Your Follow-Up Strategies and Close More Sales. I mean, what haven't you done? Maybe we could limit it by saying, what haven't you done?
Well, I started at a very young age. And in this newest book, because I've written a couple books, in this newest book, Finding the Fortune, there's a story called Are You a Hot Tomato? And it talks about my introduction to sales at age 10. When all the kids wanted to sell lemonade in the neighborhood, my father looked at me and said, "Lemonade?" He said, "How can you make any money if everybody's selling the same product?" And he burst my bubble. And we're standing in the kitchen. My mother was canning tomatoes. There was a sea of tomatoes on the counter. He said, "I've got to go downstairs. You sit here with Mom and we'll talk about it when I come back up." Well, I was steaming. What does he mean I can't sell lemonade? Mom said, "Well, wait a minute. Look around. What do you see?" I see you canning tomatoes. I said, "Yes." She says, "And what does Dad do with these tomatoes every year with the ones that I don't can?" "Well, he gives them away." "You're right," she said. "What could you do with these tomatoes?" "I could sell them." Dad came upstairs and I said, "Dad, I've got the greatest idea. I could sell those tomatoes. I could paint my little wagon, get some boxes." He gave me that idea. Those tomatoes turned into cucumbers and carrots, all types of vegetables that I was going door to door with a little pad, name and address, selling tomatoes. But
Wow.
The key to that doesn't stop there. At the end of the season, he says, "Now what are you going to do?" I said, "I don't know. We don't have any more fresh vegetables." He said, "No, what is the most important thing you need to do?" I said, "I'm not sure." He He said, well, let's sit down and talk about this. If Mrs. Smith bought tomatoes, do we want to thank her? If Mrs. Barnes bought tomatoes, do we want to thank her? He said, what if you got some really pretty notes and you sent them all out at Christmas, thanking them for their orders and that you would be back next spring? Follow up.
Yeah.
And that's where started my experience with understanding the networking and how to really do business, how to really take and develop those relationships. Because I built relationships with all those neighbors. I would send them a note in the spring and say, I'm coming. I had a little sales flyer that I designed with a crayon. It became a business where all the kids were selling lemonade, making pennies. I was making dollars.
Yeah, that's a great story. That's a great story.
So from lemonade, I went to selling insurance. I made the coffee, cleaned the toilets, worked for several agencies, worked for Aetna Insurance, and then got a break. I wanted to sell commercial insurance. I love how things work, what the parts are, how they all go together. And a gentleman gave me an opportunity. And he said, so you want to sell commercial insurance? He said, I'll give you $300 a week. You've got 3 months to make it or you're out. He said, there's 2 keys to success. That first key is getting your knees bloody, getting out there and building those relationships, following up with all those people. I could hear my father's words and as he said them, really taking and mastering how you're going to take care of those customers like eggs in a basket. And when you do this long enough, that second key will show up and it will take years. Well, Frank, it finally showed up about 5 years ago. And that key is passing it forward. How can I now take all the things I've learned over all the years and help others? That job, starting with this gentleman, as I sat there and took notes, he said to me, what do you think? I said, wow. He said, are you ready to get started? I said, yes, but I have one question. He said, sure. I said, can I go with you? He said, what? I said, well, how am I going to learn if I don't go with you and learn the process? He said, nobody's ever asked me that before. Okay, kid, you're my next buddy. And that's what he called me for 8 years. He was an older guy. He was kind of gruff. He wasn't this, oh, it's okay. No, get up, get dressed, get out the door. That's the name of my first book. Go make it rain. Let's get it done. When it's raining outside, you need to be out on the street because nobody else is. And he taught me so many valuable lessons that when he retired, I ended up starting my own insurance agency that evolved to a large commercial business nationwide. Retired, and I needed something fun. It was a time in my life, success only happens when you have failure. And in my life, at that point, I felt I failed. Dad died, who was my mentor and my best friend. My son was ill, and I went through a divorce. I couldn't keep this agency together. I didn't know what to do. And I went to a networking event with these gorgeous shoes on. And this woman tapped me on the shoulder and she said, I love your shoes. And we started talking. She asked what I did. I told her I was in the insurance business and she said she was with Mary Kay Cosmetics. I'd love to offer you a facial, she said. Come to the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I went. And needless to say, I spent, and I'm still involved with Mary Kay, 22 years later involved. And started a consulting business about 10 years because I took all my tools and talents and skills to help so many people.
You talk about in your notes, the pre-interview notes, the assessment tool, how to fascinate. Can you share a little about that?
Sure. This is a tool that's not like a DISC, Myers-Briggs, or Strength Finders. That's a psychology-driven tool. This is a communication brand. What makes you different and what you do best? How do we really find that to be able to write a great bio, be able to write a great LinkedIn? Think about your 60-second commercial. How many people get up and start with, "Hi, I'm Barbara Smith, a realtor," and we all go click. We know what you do. Being a business strategist, I don't want to be in the pile of coaches because I'm different in the way I do business. And so I developed a 60-second that's 9 seconds because that's our attention span, kind of like a goldfish these days. So I pioneer ideas with cutting-edge strategy to assist individuals and teams to grow and win. I'm Jean MacDonald with Team Empowerment. Now, I might ask a couple questions along the way, but one of the things that I've learned with this Fascinate tool, it is one of the best tools to really ignite who you really are. It's not what's in you when you take a disc and I'm a DI or an SC or whatever. What this is how do I fascinate Frank to want to take that next step? We use this tool for individuals. We use it for teams to help teams get along, because sometimes someone in the room they have a different style of communication. So how do we bring those styles together to take the team to the next level?
Right.
I've worked with Marriott when they merged with Starwood. What an exciting experience. How honored I was to be there. I've worked with individuals who are getting their businesses started and they need to ignite it in a way that says who they are and how they're going to show their differences. Because different is better than better. Let me say that again. Different is better than better.
I'm writing it down.
And when we understand that being different is going to bring us or ignite us so someone will listen, now that's a key to success. So this tool, it's a simple tool. It was developed by a woman by the name of Sally Hogshead. She's a branding genius. She's in the top 5 or 10 in the world. And she got started with Nike and Mini Cooper working with their brands, Coca-Cola. And she would go to their offices and they'd say, "Jean, we want you to show us how we're different and what we do best." Say it's a can of whatever. And that's how she would develop the advertising. She realized after working with companies for a number of years that it wasn't this, but it was the people behind it. And that's how this assessment was born. She went to the Kelton Group, who are a group of scientists that develop assessments. And along with her strategy of this, that's how this tool was born. It's been given to 1.5 million people worldwide. And we've seen such change in confidence, self-esteem. When you feel confident about who you are because you're different and you can show off your brand, it excites you. It lights a fire. Now, my top two advantages are, as you can hear from me, are innovation. And my second is leadership or power. When I ignite those two advantages in my best ability, I'm unstoppable. Unlike a psychology-driven test, you take it and you put it in the drawer. When you work with a product like this, it's repetition that makes this so good. So when I work with somebody, it's not just them taking the assessment and throwing it in the drawer. I make it up in a nice little, with plastic and everything, so they can bring it out, so they can identify those adjectives that say who they are. So it can help them really identify what makes them different, what they do best, and it has personality descriptors so they can write what they do. And I help with that.
Interesting. Before we hit record, you were talking about a couple things I wanted to kind of flesh out here. We should have been recording before we were recording. Let me just put it that way. And that's usually the case, right, Jean, when you get on these things?
Absolutely.
I want to talk about your coffee triangle.
Well, if you wanted me to meet somebody, Frank, or let's say I want to introduce you, I have someone I want to introduce you to. I would set it up as a three-way call, a Zoom call. I'm the invitee, so I'm going to be the moderator. And on this, I would send both of you this sheet, which says, let's identify who. My job then is to say, okay, Frank, let me ask you a group of questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. From there, I might say, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
And a big one in here is, what's your biggest challenge? Now, not everybody's going to give you the answer right away. And it's like when I call people and everything's always great. Well, it isn't. So tell me what you need.
I totally agree.
The other day, somebody called me and she said, how are things? I said, I'm between a sweat and a faint. She said, what? I said, I'm between a sweat and a faint. She said, think about that. I said, right now, I'm really challenged. She said, well, what can I help you with? But if we don't ask, we don't get. So I asked that question, what's your biggest challenge? And usually when I ask it by the third time, we can flush it out a little. I go, tell me about your 3 best customers. Explain some referrals that'll work for you. What are your best? Give me a couple best power partners or team players that really work for you. And so we go through these individually and we talk about them. And then I ask, now, what's a new door that you want to open? What have you dreamed about that you want to do next? I think we get caught in a rut. We're like hamsters on a wheel. And when I do business strategy, every month I take my clients through an exercise before we start the new month. It always goes out on the 30th or the 31st. And it is a little piece about reflecting on the month before. Because again, we're caught in this world right now where everything is Zoom, it's fast, we're moving, we're shaking. But if we don't stop and reflect, as I spoke to someone yesterday I'm working with, she said, I'm tired. It's not fun anymore. I said, well, all you need is a refresh button. What are we going to do different? Right. And by the time I got off this conversation, we figured something out. She was all excited. I've got to go. I said, okay, but we need to talk about this next week to see what you've done. So this piece, along with this triangle, so now I would do it with the other person, and then I do a recap. And that recap talks about what Frank said, and I've put some stars next to certain things. And the most important thing to this triangle coffee is what?
I would say the relationship or the people getting together and having the conversation.
It's the follow-up.
Okay.
Because the follow-up, if we get together as 3 people, but nothing happens, what have we got?
No, you're right.
0.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I
I've ignited the process.
Yep.
Now it's up to Frank and let's say Barbara to start building that relationship. As I said in my note to you, meeting once is nice, twice is great. Building those relationships are priceless. And that's where people go, oh, well, I don't know. Well, maybe it isn't everybody. Of course, we don't have that same energy with everybody.
Right.
But then we have to be graceful about that and send a thank you note. Send something to them with 2 business cards in it that you appreciated their time. Don't do an email. Come on, go old school here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm showing my age, but you know what? I send approximately 500 notes a year. Why? Because you're important. There's a sign around everybody's neck that says, make me feel important. And maybe that person who was there was having a bad day. And just something like that would make them feel better.
Yeah. No, those are great points. Those are great points. And it's common sense. It's not common practice. And it just, what I did years ago to kind of empower myself is I went out and bought cards. Now you have cards, you do cards. That's another whole aside to MacDonald.
My side hustle.
Your side hustle, yes, which I think is great. But I would challenge anybody to go out and just buy a bunch of cards. I bought a stack of birthday cards, and then when the birthdays come up on my calendar, I put the birthdays on the calendar. I don't have the excuse that I don't have a card, right? I've got the cards. I don't have to, I got to go get a card. I've got the cards. They're all different. You get 5 of this, 5 of this, 5 of this. And you just take a little time and write a note. I don't know if I do 500, but I do a lot.
It all starts with teaching your children the same thing. My grandchildren, whenever I send them something, they always send me a card. Why? Because their Mimi has taught them, thank you. Yeah. How special to receive something from a child. And I've saved them all. But what did I do? I gave them all cards with envelopes and stamps. So now that, when they're old enough to sit down, because when they start this practice, like my father with the tomatoes, now you're a hot tomato.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears here. Let's talk about your business. What would be a good referral for you? How can people get a hold of you?
Well, a good referral for me would be someone who is looking to fascinate themselves by taking this assessment, digging in a little deeper. Mm-hmm. Maybe they need just a brush up. Maybe they'd like my book. Right. And if you go on my website right now, we have taken this book and really put it on sale. So it's on my website. We'd love it. We also have an ebook there. And I have my other book up there. New book coming out next year called The Confidence Package.
Why don't we, what's your website?
My website is geneconnects.com. And you can go there and there's a page with a store on it. But this Fascinate assessment, if anybody's interested, that's on the website also. You can call me if you want. But leave a message, because if you just call me and don't leave a message, I probably, won't pick up. Just leave a message, because we get so many of these spam calls. Text me. I'm available. I am not hidden in the weeds, and I love to do what I do. And if I can help anybody, I'm glad to have just a conversation.
It sounds great. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.